Senator Van Hollen, this is all pending litigation, as you're well aware, and the timing of it, I can't discuss pending litigation. This is a whistleblower lawsuit pending within my office, but I will say the timing of it I find suspect, as he takes hits at Emil Bovee, who is one of the best human beings I know, one of the smartest, brilliant men I know, who will soon become a federal judge. And his hearing happens to be today, and I find the irony of the timing of it pretty remarkable, the lawsuit. But this had to do with attorney-client privilege information that was disclosed. I can't talk about the substance, but what I will tell you, and you have obviously my word, any zealous advocacy means to be done ethically and honestly, always. And that's what I mean by zealous advocacy. He also accused Emil Bovee of things that Todd Blanche, who is one of the best human beings I also know, my Deputy Attorney General, was in the room and said did not happen. But again, I wish I could get into greater detail. I can't because it's pending. But
major alarm just went off inside the Justice Department. Senator Chris Van Hollen pressed Pam Bondi over a whistleblower complaint that raises uncomfortable questions about honesty, ethics, and whether DOJ attorneys are being punished for refusing to cross legal lines. This isn't routine oversight. It's a test of whether the rule of law still means what it's supposed to.
Madam Attorney General, yesterday, Erez Ruveni filed a whistleblower complaint against the Department of Justice. As I think you know, he was a 15-year veteran of the Department of Justice. He received commendations during the first Trump administration for all his work at DOJ, but he filed a detailed account of his recent experience at the Department of Justice, saying that prior to his determination, that he was terminated after he refused to sign an appeal brief that was unsupported by evidence or the law. And he says, I didn't sign up to lie. In response to his termination, you made a statement on Fox News a little while ago saying, at my direction, every Department of Justice attorney is required to zealously advocate on behalf of the United States, and that any attorney who fails to abide by this direction will face consequences. So, General Bondi, I guess the direct question is, he says he was fired because he didn't want to make an untruthful statement to a court of law. I have two questions. Number one, I assume you agree that zealous advocacy does not mean telling untruths to courts of law. And second, if that's not the case, what did you mean by saying he was not a zealous advocate?
Senator Van Hollen, this is all pending litigation, as you're well aware, and the timing of it, I can't discuss pending litigation. This is a whistleblower lawsuit pending within my office, but I will say the timing of it I find suspect, as he takes hits at Emil Bovee, who is one of the best human beings I know, one of the smartest, brilliant men I know, who will soon become a federal judge. And his hearing happens to be today, and I find the irony of the timing of it pretty remarkable, the lawsuit. But this had to do with attorney-client privilege information that was disclosed. I can't talk about the substance, but what I will tell you, and you have obviously my word, any zealous advocacy means to be done ethically and honestly, always. And that's what I mean by zealous advocacy. He also accused Emil Bovee of things that Todd Blanche, who is one of the best human beings I also know, my Deputy Attorney General, was in the room and said did not happen. But again, I wish I could get into greater detail. I can't because it's pending. But I stand by Emil Bovee and I stand by Todd Blanche every day, and I always will.
Well, Madam Attorney General, I will say that his account seems to have lots of information. So as you say, this will obviously be something that's litigated or reviewed through due process procedures. But I have to say that it's very, very disturbing. We've also heard from others in other departments who are responsible for implementing the laws of the United States that they feel uncomfortable about having been asked to do things that they thought were unethical. Let me go on to some of the budget questions, and I really want to follow up on my colleagues, Senator Moran and Senator Collins. But the DOJ grant funding is being sort of cut back on two fronts. One, in April, the department terminated hundreds of grant awards, notifying grantees that their current grant funds were gone, effective immediately. That included, law enforcement training grants, technical assistance awards, some dating back to fiscal year, I think, 2017. So question number one is, are you going to be releasing those funds? The second concern regarding grants has to do with the monies that were appropriated in this fiscal year, in March. And my understanding is that DOJ is withholding an overwhelming number of notices of funding opportunities, NOFOs, meaning that grantees who rely on these grants, including many who provide services to victims of crimes, are literally, in some cases, running out of money. For example, the department's biggest grant-making component, the Office of Justice Programs, has only posted one notice for fiscal year 25, NOFO notice. So if you could answer the question with respect to both those pieces.
Sure, and that's a very valid question, Senator. The notices will be going out in coming weeks about the grants. And we did cut grants by 6%, and I'm here to tell every senator, if we did cut a grant that you care about that is specific to your state, please contact me. I've turned on grants that were cut off. So please, if that happens, there's an appeal process, but you can pick up the phone and you can call me, and I would be more than happy to look at that. I never want to take away a grant that is actually helping Americans, helping victims, helping law enforcement, and we're looking at it on a case-by-case basis, and many of those are being appealed already, but you have my word, we will look at all of those, absolutely.
Thank you. And in terms of the other piece of the question, when the notices for information will go out, because the fiscal year obviously is, running out, and we are hearing from lots of entities that are waiting for those notices so they can apply for the grant funding.
Yeah, yes, Senator. The notice of funding is consistent with our priorities, and they're finalizing it right now. It will be going out very shortly.
Very shortly. All right. Thank you.
It'll be posted on a rolling basis, too, I believe.
Okay. If you could just keep us posted on that. And I would appreciate it, Madam Attorney General, if you could have your team or respond to a letter that about 30 senators wrote to you on this topic of the prior fiscal year funds that were frozen.
I will make sure they look at that letter. I think we've received probably thousands of letters.
You've gotten lots of letters. But we really do need, in order to do our job, to get responses. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Attorney General.
What unfolded between Senator Van Hollen and Pam Bondi wasn't just a heated exchange. It was a direct hit on the Department of Justice's credibility. At the center of it all is R.Z. Ruvini, a career DOJ attorney with 15 years of service, awards, and a reputation for integrity. And his accusation is stark. He was pushed out because he refused to sign a legal brief that he believed had no foundation in fact or law. As he put it, "I didn't sign up to lie." That is not the kind of sentence you expect from someone inside the Justice Department. And it's exactly why Van Hollen pressed Bondi so hard. She has publicly warned that any DOJ attorney who fails to zealously advocate will face consequences. But the senator asked the obvious question: does zealous advocacy now mean bending the truth? Does it mean pushing arguments you can't defend in court? Bondi didn't answer. Instead, she dodged behind pending litigation and tried to shift attention toward the whistleblower's timing, conveniently tied to the confirmation hearing of one of her close allies. But the question remains, why would a veteran attorney risk his career by filing a detailed whistleblower complaint if the facts weren't serious? And why can't the Attorney General give a clear explanation? When silence replaces transparency, trust erodes. Fast. And this wasn't the only red flag. Van Hollen also pressed Bondi on the sudden cuts to DOJ grant programs, funding meant for law enforcement training, victim services, and community safety. Hundreds of grants were abruptly canceled, some from as far back as 2017, leaving organizations scrambling to stay afloat. Bondi called it a 6% reduction and pointed to an appeals process, but that does nothing for victims who depend on those services right now, or for police departments trying to stretch shrinking budgets. Put together, these moments paint a concerning picture. Whistleblowers facing retaliation, grant programs slashed without explanation, and a Justice Department leadership that seems more focused on political narratives than public accountability. And that's why this matters beyond one hearing. When integrity collapses inside the nation's top law enforcement agency, it doesn't stay contained. It affects victims waiting for help. It affects communities relying on safety programs. It affects every American who expects the law to be applied honestly, not strategically. If we fail to protect whistleblowers, if we allow truth-telling to become punishable, we risk normalizing the very behavior the DOJ is meant to prevent. So ask yourself, should refusing to mislead a court ever cost someone their job? And what happens to justice when loyalty is valued more than honesty? If you believe transparency matters, and if you want institutions that serve the public, not political pressure, make sure you subscribe and stay tuned. Because these stories don't end in one hearing, and neither should the accountability.